you
So
go.
here we go. Kurt, I leave it to you. And take it
Before
off.
I start the little presentation that we've put together, I just want to say thank you, Jim. I'm so humbled. You fellas have some real dignitaries, some heavy hitters that joined this group, and I'm just I truly am humbled that you invited me along here. You seem like a great bunch of folks. So anyway, thank you again, Jim. So
Sure.
yes, we're going to talk about cleaning records and everything associated with our beloved hi-fi system. So let's see if I can get this to work properly. Um, and okay, there we go. All right, let's get into it. Fantastic. Thank you again, Jim. Just a real quick background. Here's our fun little logo that my wife Charlie put together. We call this little fella Brushy McBrushy. I don't know why, but that's the name of our YouTube channel, and she does all the work. I just want to state right from the outset, I am a top executive at a large financial services organization. I'm one of those 60, 80 hour a week guys, which is not a complaint. I love what I do, but there's no way we could do this without Charlie. She, about a year ago, retired from her career and said she wanted to start a YouTube channel. I said, well, that's interesting. Go for it, honey. But she was struggling as to what it should be about. And I said, well, you and I both have enjoyed the audiophile world and collecting records for a long time. But I got to tell you, it's just full of guys out there that are reviewing equipment and reviewing music and records. But I have this little passion about cleaning things, a touch of OCD perhaps, but nothing weird or anything like that. But we had some nice cleaning machines, and I always took a lot of effort to clean vinyl as best I could. And I said, why don't we do something on cleaning records? And that's how Let's Clean a Record got its start. But as I mentioned, I've been in this hobby for 50 years now, something like that. My dear departed mother got me into music as a very young boy. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, and from before I could remember, she was taking me to see the Cleveland Orchestra, the pretty good orchestra back then, and really, really got a love of music. She was into the big stuff, the Wagners and Beethovens and Mahlers of the world. So that was in my years as a young boy. I read a book as a young boy on, or sort I won't say young, but maybe a kid going into college called On Listening to the World. And I remember that influenced me a lot about the power of hearing over other senses like sight. And it just got me more and more into playing music, listening to music, and recording music. Over the years, I've had a recording studio that I ran when I lived in Oakland, California, called Creeping Time. Had a lot of fun with that. Before that, in Chicago, a similar kind of recording studio. Very much enjoyed being on both sides of the glass. I did have a short stint in journalism. Back in the day, this would be in the 90s when I was an expat living in London. I would do reviews for Soundstage magazine, all analog type stuff, turntables and that sort of thing, cartridges. And I would do show reports for Positive Feedback magazine and Listener magazine. It was through Positive Feedback that I met Harvey Rosenberg. I don't know if any of you guys remember Harvey, Uncle Harvey, I used to call him. He was a little that crap crazy, I will say, but it was just a joy to know him. And it was really Harvey who got me into single-ended triodes. And we don't want to make this talk about what my system is, but I thought I'd share that with you. I'm definitely a single-ended triodes guy. This is what you see here is our biamp system. Rather than a passive crossover, we use an electronic crossover and do that the slope and the frequencies and so forth before the amplification. So we've got 4 2A3 based amps that are connected directly to our Pure Audio project speakers. They're dipoles, and having a lot of fun with that system. So here's what I thought we would talk about this evening. All things cleaning, not only records, but other medium that we tend to play, and the system itself. So we'll go through brushes and fluids and cleaning the stylus and all the metal parts, static sleeves, dusting, flattening. Let's get into it. So the first thing I thought it would be interesting is something that we're planning for an upcoming video. These videos, by the way, we put out one, probably about one a week. Sometimes it's just short, sometimes it's a full one. We've been doing it for a little over a year now. I think we have just about 100 videos or so. And, well, they just focus on all kinds of things. And as I mentioned, one of the things that we want to do is tackle this little debate that goes on in the comment section of our videos, or on the forums like Steve Hoffman or Audio Asylum, whoever it might be. Is it better to use a brush, an actual brush, or to use the item on the right, which is from a company called Giotto? It's called the Giotto Blaster, and I've tended to favor the Blaster. My just thought process being that a brush may take debris that's on the surface of a record and kind of push it further into the groove. So I sort of liked the idea of just blowing the large debris off. Obviously, a dry cleaning is not going to really clean a record, but it'll get the dust off of it. So it's impossible, it's impossible to have two records that are exactly dirty, equal levels of dirtiness. So what we tend to do is just spend a Saturday afternoon and go through 20, 30, 40, 50 records, and maybe we'll clean one with the brush, one with the Giotto Blaster, and we have gathered some tools to see how effective they are. An electronic microscope is one. We can look at what dirt is remaining in the groove. We also have a static meter. It's akin to a voltmeter that you might put on your car battery, that sort of thing, but it measures the static that is remaining on this on any surface. And as long as you hold it an equal distance every time above that surface, it should give a pretty reasonable reading of how much static is there. So this is part of the debate. Does brushing cause more static than blowing? Well, I don't know, but it's an interesting discussion, and one of the things that we're planning for an upcoming episode. So let's talk a little bit about manual wet cleaning. This is your first step, your first foray into properly cleaning a record, I would argue. And of course, for folks out there, and I think a lot about young people who are for the first time getting into playing records. A lot of them collect records and don't own a turntable, which is a whole different conversation. But for those that do, they need to learn how to clean them, and perhaps they don't have the finances for some of these fancy machines. Some of them can be very expensive. So I always like to keep the budget-oriented processes in mind. And we've done videos specifically for, hey, if you only have $150 to spend, what are your options out there? So as you can see, you're probably going to be familiar with the spin clean, ubiquitous type of thing. It's kind of funny to say that maybe that's overpriced for what it is, what kind of money audiophiles will spend on things, but it is a lot of money for what it is. And I've always said, hey, if you're really short on cash, the Studebaker is half the price of the spin clean, and is basically the same sort of plastic tub. One of the things that I think is we have found is a nice way to do a budget clean is to have one of each, or two spin cleans, two Studebakers, whatever it is, one with pure water, one with your water mixed with your record cleaning fluid. That makes a nice way to clean a record without spending too much money. We all remember I'm drawing a blank on the name, the D3 product from back in the 70s, been around forever. I actually have not tried one of these yet, but it's a manual cleaning option. And then down here in the lower right-hand corner is representative of Disc Doctor. I'm a huge fan of Disc Doctor for a manual cleaning process. There's something very, very special about the Disc Doctor brushes. They really get deep into the groove. It's a manual process, not easy to sort of learn to pick up the water, pick up the record cleaning fluid off of the surface of the disc. But once you get the hang of it, it's not a bad process at all. The question, though, for those of us who want to get into more complex cleaning processes, more thorough cleaning processes, is would you ever bother with any of these? And I have found over time the answer is yes. We experience better results with very, very dirty records, and that kind of have to make that distinction, right? If you only collect new records or those kind of records that are already pretty clean, then this sort of thing doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you're like me and love to hit the record bins in the used record stores or even yard sales, garage sales, that sort of thing, and you're going to end up with some unbelievably filthy records. These sort of products, particularly the spin clean or the Studebaker, can give a great pre-clean. One of my favorite things to do when I get a really, really nasty record, or two or three or four, especially if I've picked up a haul from some from a yard sale, is to put the spin clean up, get some distilled water in there, and use a product like Turgiclean, which is I don't know. I think it's akin to a paint stripper in some ways, and that's a great way to really pre-clean the record, get it into another spin clean or a Studebaker with some pure water, and you've got all the real heavy gunk off there, and then can proceed to utilizing a machine of some sort. So just some nice options for those on a budget, and or for folks that want to do a pre-clean on a very dirty record. The disc doctor or the sort of plastic tub approach, I think, are viable options.
Kurt, does the disc, I've never used one. Does the disc doctor have a brush in it in addition to the tub?
No tub is associated with the disc doctor. The idea is you lay it on a hard, flat surface, generally put down a microfiber cloth and set the record on that. And then you take the record cleaning fluid and actually apply it directly to the brush, and then just back and forth motions, generally a quarter to a third of the record at a time. There's something about the nap of that brush. Obviously, not, you can see, I'll use my cursor. You can see here, it's not a bristle type brush, but rather a pad type brush. But there's something about the way the good doctor, who I had the great pleasure of chatting with a few times before he retired and sold his rights and remaining products to Chad Kassem over at Acoustic Sounds. He's now the exclusive distributor of Disc Doctor products. But that brush is the grabby. I'm going to make up a new word here. It's the grabbiest brush I have ever used. Once you get that liquid on there and move it back and forth, it so adheres to the vinyl and gets so deep into the groove that you can literally pick the vinyl up off of your table just by holding the brush. It'll grip it that tightly. It's really an amazing, or I'll just say very, very unique type of nap.
I
So
use those with my VPI. I actually misspoke. I was thinking of the spin clean and the Studebaker in terms of, do they have brushes inside the tanks there?
they do, yes, that's a good question. So basically, like if you can imagine a brush right here, same thing with the Studebaker, one on each side, they slip down into little slots. And as long as you keep those brushes clean, again, they're pad type brushes, they do an okay job. If that's all we had to rely on, and if all your budget could take was that, then that's the best you're going to get, I think. But as a pre-clean, they really do. I love to be able to soak the records in there and just kind of leave them sit for a little while, spin them around back and forth periodically. But again, something really, really special about those disc doctor brushes. So if you're willing to learn how to use them properly and you're on a budget or want to use them as a pre-clean, I think disc doctor is a great option. Okay, let's go on to something we all know about. Been around for a very long time, suction type machines. Just for the record, we have in our studio the VPI Cyclone, which is a real workhorse of a machine. And one thing I really like about it is it's unidirectional. The flip of the switch, it'll go forwards or backwards, which I think really does help in the cleaning process. I guess the question that I would put out there and give you guys something to think about is, are they still relevant today in an age of ultrasonic machines? I think that really depends on the kind of records you tend to collect. What we have found is if you're collecting new records that you just want to maximize their sound, or you don't tend to dig through the bins and get the dirty stuff, then you probably don't need a suction machine. These days, if I was buying new and that was my record collecting preference, I would go for an ultrasonic. I'll state that for the record. However, if you're like me and really like to get into pick up some dirty vinyl, then these suction type machines, I think, I keep using the term workhorses. They really are a great way to clean the record from all the junk that can build up over decades and decades and decades. And then if you want to refine it, you can take it to something like an ultrasonic cleaner. I sometimes hesitate to put a truly dirty piece of vinyl into an ultrasonic machine. It's not that it won't work, but there's something about the concept of blowing off or cavitating off bits of debris and having that float around in the same water that you're using to clean the record itself. So for that reason, with really dirty vinyl, I prefer to start off with a suction type machine. I love the VPI. This thing is built like a tank. It'll last forever. I haven't tried a lot of alternatives to that, save this clear audio version here in the upper right. Really fancy one, does both sides at once and did a fine job. So I want to state for the record, I'm not putting down suction type machines, but they have their work cut out for them in the age of ultrasonics. So that's how I feel about suction type machines. You buy old stuff, they're great to have. But I wouldn't want to have just that when we have so many wonderful ultrasonics available to us. And I look forward to testing some more of these kinds of machines. I'd love to get my hands on a nitty gritty. They've been around forever and ever. I think they're kind of cool and iconic. So maybe someday we'll get to try one and do a full review.
Bert, at one point, if maybe you would touch on this, I know on the internet, there are those people who are concerned about ultrasonics that blow dry and leaving potential residue, as either from the cleaning or water residue or whatever on the record, and they swear by, what a pain, but doing it on the ultrasonic and then throwing it on a suction device to suck off
Yep.
the moisture.
Yep. I love it. You're right about that. Well, let's talk about
any that. Any actual evidence that
there is. We do have some experience with that. I'll talk about that when we get to that section. I will say something about the VPI before we go on. Again, such a utilitarian, such a well-built machine. One of the things I like about it is if you're into 10-inch records or 7-inch 45s, they make wands that are available where the slit and the pads on each side of the slit are designed specifically for those size records, which I think is a nice option too. If you're collecting 78s, you're going to get some very dirty records for sure. So that's another thing I like about the VPI, and that may be available on others, but I really know the VPI best. Okay, so there are your suction type machines. I got to bring up string type machines before we get into the ultrasonics. They kind of crack me up in a way, right? Expensive and finicky. That must be perfect for us. But we do have a Loracraft in house. It's the PR6i, I believe it's called. They make a 4i and a 6i. I will say they do. I've tried them both, and they do an identical job. If you're into the Loracrafts, just one has a bit louder motor than the other. We went for the 6i since we're filming and so forth, and wanted to try to keep it quiet. You could say, hey, this is just a suction type machine, be it the Keith Monks or the Loracraft. The Keith Monks versions are over on the right and the Loracraft on the left. Is they do suck off the fluid from the surface of the disc. But there is something particularly special, I think, about having that very, very tight, specific suction point. So if you've never used a string type machine, it kind of looks like a turntable, doesn't it? These are arms that literally, ride across the surface of the disc. proper way to use them is to have the disc come into the arm or into the point of where the suction is happening, and then you reverse it and put it on the other side on the way out. It is sometimes I feel like these machines can clean better than anything else out there. But it is finicky. It's difficult to get it right. There's a lot of, I mean, look at this over on the Lorca. You got a little glass jar over on the side. If those tubes that connect this are just the slightest bit off, if there's anything that is not properly sealed, it's just not going to work. So it almost reminds me of Frankenstein's laboratory. It has that kind of feel to it. The string is literally on a spool that sits on a spindle there, and you have to move the string a little bit every time that you use it, so you're not putting dirty string on top of the clean or top of the new disc. They're, I guess I could say, in one way, they're really a lot of fun to use. But they're finicky as heck, and not, they're probably on the bottom when it comes to convenience. But as far as effectiveness is concerned, they're pretty cool. And they
Is the
look.
point of the string to
Pardon?
act, is the point of the string to act as a wick, or
Yes,
is it
correct.
theoretically,
It wicks it.
string will be too big to get into the groove, obviously.
You're absolutely correct. It does not get into the groove. It just kind of sort of rides over the surface of the disc, and that helps to wick it up. And what you'll see is, as the get my cursor here, as this point here is going across the record, that string, that fresh piece of string that you put on there, sucks the water up right down the tube, right down the wand, I should say, and in the tube and down into this waste jar there. And you can see there's a little piece, the string is actually hanging free in the jar, wiggling around a little bit as it's working, and the water drips off of that. So it's an interesting way to do it. Unfortunately, the price of these machines recently went up, and the folks at the U.S. distributor was Water Music, and I think he bowed out after they raised the prices. So it is a rather expensive machine. I've never had the pleasure of using Keith Monk's, but it's been around forever. It is highly regarded as well. Very similar kind of approach. But interesting types of machines, and I tell you, every once in a while, I end up using it. And as we'll describe in a moment, this would be the type of machine I would use where I don't want to let a drying mechanism take place, where you would utilize an ultrasonic for the basic clean, but rather than allowing it to dry, especially a drying mechanism, I would take it out wet, set it on this rubber mat, and suck the water off what is now perhaps dirty water attached to it. Suck it off on one side. I have an extra rubber mat for the flip side of the record, and that is a really effective way of cleaning a record. Ultrasonic and string type; those two together do a fantastic job. So those are our string type machines. I thought we should also, of course, talk about ultrasonic machines. Now, I wanted to represent a few here that I have firsthand experience with. We own the KL Audio and have for many years. As Jim mentioned, we had the great pleasure of reviewing the DeGritter. And I just want to give kudos to DeGritter. That was the first company that sent me a loaner and said, do a review. And I was just so honored that they were willing to do that for us. And I'll just say it right now: if you're not one of those folks that really seeks out the ultra dirty records, and you could only have one machine, I would probably go for the DeGritter. I love the DeGritter. I love it's the way you can program it. I love the fact that you can use just pure water or water and record cleaning fluid, which is not all that common in record cleaning machines. Most just use pure water. Are there some criticisms of the DeGritter? There are. They're hypothetical, though, in nature. One of the things we wonder is you can't see it in this picture, but behind the disc is a plastic insert. And there are two of them that come with the machine. Typically, one would be used with water, one with record cleaning fluid, and you're sort of pulling it out and inserting it into the machine itself. Jim, you know this. You bought this machine. Is it possible that that physical connection there could wear out over time? That's something guys are speculating about. But I'll tell you, the way it works is just fantastic. I love the flexibility with this. You can change the speed of the fan if you want a lower fan speed, but a longer drying process, or you could turn it off entirely. It allows various numbers of revolutions. There's a pre-soak functionality in this. The computer that is built into the degritter is an impressive programming, and I thought it was an extremely effective machine. I got to tell you, I still feel a pang of that I sent it back. They said, hey, you want to buy it? And I'm like, oh, you know how many machines I have? It just wouldn't be right for me to buy yet another one. But boy, when I sent it back, I had the blues for a few days. Oh golly, I wish I still had that machine. It's just so cool. Um, so that's the degritter. The KL Audio is one we've had for many, many years. I would say the KL Audio is the most robust ultrasonic machine out there, at least based on my usage and research. It's sort of like the VPI Cyclone in the suction machine world. It's built like a tank. So, I get a lot of folks ask me in comments and chat forums and just face to face, if you only have one, what would you have? Well, it kind of depends. If you owned a record store and we're going to clean 50 or 100 records every single day, day in and day out, it'd be hard to not recommend a KL Audio. It never overheats. It is also the ultimate inconvenience. Just drop the record into the slot. There's only two buttons for the length of time that it's going to wash, the length of time it's going to dry, and you can just leave it there and it'll finish and beep and be ready for you to pick up immediately or 2 hours later. It automatically fills up the tank and then drains the tank. Really, really interesting piece of machinery. The one we're looking at is the older model. There is a newer one. I would so love to review the newer model. I've got a note into Chad Cassim at Acoustic Sounds. He distributes the KL Audios to see if he'd be willing to send me a loaner to sort of compare the two. So fingers crossed that would be a future episode, but really a workhorse of an ultrasonic. This is just representing the DIY model. Obviously not entirely DIY, but there's companies like Vever and others out there that make ultrasonic machines that are suitable for records. Of course, ultrasonic machines get used all the time and for cleaning jewelry. We were talking earlier about marksmanship sports. Guys who reload ammunition will clean their brass in ultrasonic machines. But there are several out there that are intended for cleaning records, and that's a viable option as well. Up in the upper right, we have Kermis, and I don't know if any of you all have had the opportunity to interact with Charles Kermis. He's got a very strong opinion about the way to clean records, and I have to say it's a unique approach, and it is an extremely effective approach. The downside to the Kermis process is it takes an incredible amount of time just to clean one record. So I've always said, I'm a big fan of the Kermis process, but I really reserve it for my most treasured recordings because it's a pain in the butt. It's sort of the opposite end of the KL Audio. And then up in the top there is one I wanted to talk about, and that's another ultrasonic machine that I would love to review. It's the Humming Guru. It is the most, as far as I can tell, for proper made-to-be record cleaning machines, it's the most budget-oriented. I want to say under $500 for the basic model. It's not going to be as convenient. It's going to be a little more finicky to, actually get through cleaning a record, but I'd love to try it out. Some of the feedback I'm reading online is fairly effective. So, it kind of got all sort of price points there. And that's been my experience thus far with ultrasonic machines. And are they the ultimate cleaning system? Well, they're pretty darn close. I would not want to live without one these days. As far as actually, maybe we could go to the next screen. We'll talk about the process itself, right? The idea of a bubble cavitating against a surface that's the process. That's what actually cleans it, whether it be jewelry or brass or whatever. It's exploding millions of tiny, tiny bubbles that pop, and when they pop, they pull any contaminants, any surface grunge off of what they're cavitating against. But as you can see, look at this. There's so many different approaches to this. I just took some of the more popular ones, DeGritter, Hummingbird, Kermes, and so on and so forth. And you can see the frequencies vary from mostly between 35 and 40. Then you got DeGritter up there 120. They'll also use different numbers of transducers. 2 to 4 seems common. Some will mount them on the side, some will mount them on the bottom. So when I look at all that, I think, well, wait, what's best? I really can't answer that question because I've seen pros and cons out of various types of setups. Basically, if I take this first bullet point, some will claim that anything above 35 kilohertz could cause damage to the records. That's really Charles Kermes talking. He thinks larger bubbles with a lower frequency are the way to do it. Does that also relate to the fact to clean a record with his process that you've got to do it 4, 5, 6 times, cycles, that is, through the ultrasonic machine? Maybe that is part of the reason why, because we keep it down there at 35 hertz. Others will claim that smaller bubbles, which is what you get with higher frequencies, are actually more gentle to the vinyl. So it's not. No one has settled this question. Are larger bubbles better for getting the contaminants off, or do those smaller bubbles get deeper into the groove? It's an unknown for us at this time. All we can go off of is what we've tested. In our case, it's the DeGritter and the Kermes and the KL Audio, which again all have their pros and cons. I will say this. Yes, go ahead.
I was going to ask if you know of any really well done scientific studies, maybe using electron microscopes, where I think we talked about people taking records to, physical chemistry departments at universities where they will run, one machine that works at, let's say, 120, like the DeGritter, or something like the KL, that, they'll run it for a half an hour or whatever, and then actually look at the surface of the vinyl to see if there is, in fact, any actual damage. Do you know of anyone who's actually done that?
There's only 2 people that I've known, 2 organizations that I know have done that, and one is Kermes. And those type of machines that you're referring to is not something we can afford in our household. But yes, he will go to lab experts and have that looked at, and they can also look at what may be remaining on the surface of the disc after cleaning, and it's not something you can see with even a good quality electronic microscope. It's got to use this high-end technology. And that is something that Kermes has touted for some time. The other organization that does it doesn't really have a cleaning product in the market, but that's Last Factory. They've looked at that from a microfracturing perspective. The idea with Last is they believe that over time, records can fracture at a microscopic level. Little tiny pieces can come off, and that's what their Last preservative is intended to prevent. A whole nother argument as to whether that's effective or improves the sound or degrades the sound. But to answer your question, Kermes is the only one that I'm aware of that has actually gone through that step.
Thank you.
I did a proxy, and that's what I wanted to share with you today, with both with the DeGritter, with the Kermes, and with the KL Audio, which are the 3 that I've had first-hand experience with. I took an old record called, oh gosh, I'm going to blank on this. What's it called? I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name. But the important part was that the record was pink. We all seen colored vinyl. This was a bright pink. And I thought, oh, That's something I can see. So what we did was, in all three of those machines, we put that poor little record through 50 cleaning cycles, one right after another for the maximum amount of time. And then we cleaned each machine and looked for anything, one with the naked eye, and then two under our electronic microscope to see, do we see anything pink? Is there anything coming off of this record? And I have to say, with all three of them, we found nothing. That doesn't mean that, that's a definitive study, but we thought it was worth trying to say, is there any chance that 120 kilohertz is damaging records? As far as we could tell, with the cleaning process we went through in that pink record, we found nothing. So I think this is an ongoing debate as to what the ideal frequency, the ideal number of transfers, and where transducers, I should say, and where they're mounted. You get into a conversation with a guy like Kermis, he will absolutely say you should never go above 35, and he thinks 3 mounted on the bottom coming up is the ideal solution. Obviously, others feel differently about that. I can say they all have their effectiveness. They all have their pros and cons. That's the best I can say.
Uh, isn't that simpler to just judge by the audio quality after cleaning rather than look for actual damage?
That is such an excellent point, and the answer is 100% yes. When we do our videos, we try to get scientific about it to provide supporting evidence. But what we always say is we're going to use our most powerful tool that we have at our disposal, and that's our ears. Now, again, one of our biggest one of the biggest challenges that we face is it's almost impossible to get 2 records that are identically dirty. I try to, every once in a while, if I come across a double album that appears to have been equally played and is equally dirty, I grab it. I'm like, oh, that's we can try record A on with one system and record B with another. I think it'd be great if I could find a source of records that were all produced at the same time, the exact same, pressing, and maybe none of them have been, they've all been exposed to similar environmental contaminants and so forth. And then you maybe have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 that are all similarly dirty, but I've never come across that, but I would love to. It's just impossible really to get 2 records that are identically clean. So we have to use our ears over time.
Well, the other possibility is to actually generate or create a record with controlled amount of dirt.
You mean to actually press it, or to put dirt on it?
No. Take a new record and then I don't know. Let's say roll it in flour.
Yep.
In a controlled way.
Yes, we've actually tried that. We did. I'll tell you what we did. We've never released a video on this yet, but what I did was this is going to sound so terrible. I went into the bins and got some of those, quarter, 25 cent a piece records. And we cleaned them to try to get them thoroughly clean. And then I broke into the bag, the vacuum cleaner bag, and pulled out some dust and dirt and weighed it, and literally weighed it and tried to say, okay, this is quarter ounce or whatever it was. And then we dumped it on the record and shook it around and tried to see if that might be a way to create equal amounts of dirt. The problem we found with that was dirt that had just been applied, and boy, when we get into talking about record clean fluids, I'll try to make the point that there's a huge difference between records that are recently made dirty and those that have 6 decades worth of dirt on them. So for those reasons, it wasn't a foolproof test, but we did try that once, and we may continue to try that sort of thing again. But getting back to the ultrasonics, I think they're fantastic machines. And of the 3 that we have tested thoroughly, we found no evidence that they're damaging records, and they all had their pros and cons. I'll just sum it up by saying I loved the degritter as an overall does everything kind of cleaner, both with the fluid and the pure water. I still greatly respect the Kermis, even though it's just water and alcohol. You really don't want to use record clean fluid there. But if you're willing to take the time, it's probably the most effective cleaning process that I've come across. And then the KL Audio is incredibly convenient and effective as well. But not quite as much as the Kermis or the degritter in our experience. So all three have their pros and cons, and I hope to be able to test more in the future. So, why don't we transition to record clean fluids? You notice I said, "What's in this stuff?" And that's because it's kind of it's a little bit of a sore spot for me, but it just seems so few record cleaning fluid manufacturers are willing to put their ingredients of what's in there. So you kind of have to be a bit of a detective if you want to learn what's in there. You can use your nose and it'll generally tell you if there's alcohol in there or not. Sometimes you have to go to the chemical sheets that can be found online to actually see, well, what is there a surfactant in here? Is it a wetting agent? What is it? It's hard to know. They just don't tend to put a lot of stuff in there, but a lot of information on the labels. But I thought we'd talk about the various categories that we have tested. First, most importantly, is water, of course, whether you mix it with alcohol or a concentrated record cleaning fluid or whatever it might be, you want to use as clear water as possible. We have obviously distilled, that's common, deionized, reverse osmosis, or quote unquote lab grade. You can buy water from some of the major manufacturers, AIVS, MoFi, lots of these companies make water, but I don't know what, and I've even contacted them and asked, but they don't say, is this lab grade 1 or lab grade 4? And that's a specific thing for scientists who will use ultra pure water for whatever they're testing. Interestingly, I learned that the highest grade of lab grade water, which I believe is number 4, is illegal to ship to a household. Can you imagine? I don't want to get off topic here, but who made that law? But apparently it is. I was unsure about this. Like, what is the best water to use? One of the things that I first tried was a mixture of deionized and reverse osmosis. If you go to a supermarket, to a food market like Whole Foods, there will be a large machine there where you can fill up large jugs of water. And depending on which way you move the levers, you can get RO water, distilled water, or deionized. And there's one way to move those levers, and you'll get both water that has been both deionized and put through the reverse osmosis process. And at first I thought, that's got to be the most pure water that I can get my hands on. But I thought, let's test this. And I mentioned I live here in Reno. I went to a local water testing company. It was a really fun experience. I just walked in on them, and there are all these folks working and doing their thing. And I explained about our record cleaning channel, and they all perked up and went, "Well, that's so cool." And I said, "Well, what I really would love to do is bring you, I don't know, 4, 5, or 6 samples of water, maybe the stuff that you would buy from a company that produces record clean fluid, their pure water, what I got from the Whole Foods machine, or just distilled water from the supermarket. And I want you to test it and tell me which is the purest." And they said, "I get what you're saying, but that would cost you an absolute fortune." And I said, "Well, why is that? I don't understand. I'm not in the water testing business." And he goes, "No, what we do is test for something specific. So, does your groundwater, I'm going to make this up, I don't know, contain lead or something like that? We'll test for that. To test for every possible kind of contaminant would just be beyond what you could imagine cost-wise." And I said, "Oh, okay, I get that. Oh, very good, very good." And so I thought, well, since we were having this lovely conversation, what do you guys think? And he said, this fellow who ran the business, who would come out of his office to have join us in this conversation, said you should have the purest with distilled water. Yeah, that's what Charles Kermis recommends. A lot of record cleaning company manufacturers recommend distilled, but I'm not going to say that's the answer. But I do tend to use distilled water. I still will use the deionized and RO water mixture for cleaning brushes and things like that. And I still have some quote unquote pure water that you get from AIBS or MoFi or whatever it is. So there's still a question mark there for me. What is the purest water that you can use? Lately, I've been going with distilled. I do want to make a point that storing your water is important. If you're using glass, it should be opaque or BPA-free polycarbonate number 7. You'll actually see a triangle with the number 7 on there. You can also use a high-grade, high-density polyethylene number 2. It is important, though, that you have that protective layer around whatever you're storing your water in, or over time you'll get buildup in there. We don't want that. So then we'll move on to record cleaning fluids themselves, commercially available, DIY, whatever it is. You got 2 choices, with or without alcohol. We'll get into some more specifics here in a second as to what I've found, but let's set 78 shellac aside. Normal, modern vinyl cleaning records. Sometimes a little alcohol, I think, helps. It acts as a surfactant, which we'll also talk about. But then again, some of my favorite record cleaning fluids have no alcohol. So I think it's really a matter of taste. And I'm not saying, at least in my experience, we don't believe that one is definitely superior to the other. Love to touch on this topic of enzymatic formulas. I think these are important, especially if you're collecting old, dirty records. An enzymatic formula, it's a biological catalyst, just a protein that speeds up a reaction to remove organic material. And there's the fancy names for the various kinds of organic material that this stuff can help break down. But the question is, when do you want to use it? In my mind, when do you want to use an enzymatic formula? There's a couple of times. When I physically look at a record and I can see there's crap on it that appears biologic in nature. I won't gross anybody out here with what that biologic organic material might be. But if I see that makes me think this record could use an enzymatic soak. Another one is if the record lived with a heavy smoker. If it smells like smoke, I think enzymatic formula should be part of the cleaning process. So I am a fan of enzymatic formulas, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. I wanted to mention this. There are really 2 ways to create an enzymatic formula. You have to ferment it, basically. The natural way is from a bacteria. Dr. Jim could probably pronounce this properly. Bacillus subtilis, whatever it is.
Bacillus subtilis.
There you go. And that's the natural way to do it. If it's a chemical type of enzymatic formula, it's still biological at its source, but it's been engineered generally for shelf life, for stability. So, I mean, we've probably all used a Drano in our life. That's an enzymatic formula that has been genetically engineered for stability and shelf life. We see that in record cleaning fluids, and I'm just going to come out right now and say it. Every time I have used a chemical-based enzymatic, I didn't like it. I definitely preferred the non-chemical versions. So for their effectiveness, it has nothing to do with, in my mind, with how green they are and so forth. It's just how effective are they? And I've never warmed up to any of the genetically engineered varieties.
Bert, do you know what audio intelligence formula 15? Do you know which one that is?
I do very much. We're going to talk about that on the next screen, I believe.
I will be quiet.
Yeah, in fact, that's what this is. This last bullet point here. There are combinations of a standard record cleaning fluid and an enzymatic formula. AIVS number 15 is one such example, and I think those are special. I really do. So there's your various categories. But before we get to the brands and so forth that we've tried, I wanted to talk quickly about surfactants. I think they're important. What makes one record clean fluid better than another, or is the type of surfactant that was used. But again, they don't list it on the ingredients, so I might not know. But the amount of it and the type of it can have a big impact on how effective the record clean fluid is. And if you've ever used, this would be most common on a suction type machine or maybe string type machine. If you've ever applied an enzymatic formula or a record clean fluid that doesn't have any or much surfactant, it can sort of all beat up in the middle of the disc. And if you're immediately going to start swishing that around with a brush, then maybe that's okay. But when I think of enzymatic formulas in particular, you want to give them a soak. I generally like 4 or 5 minute soak, something like that. And if that was the very first step in cleaning a record, to apply an enzymatic formula that had no surfactant in it, it's not going to work. So one of the things that we sometimes do when we get a really dirty record with a lot of organic material on it is I might give it a very quick first clean with a record clean fluid that has a good amount of surfactant in it. And then I don't rinse it after that. And frankly, the suction process, I make it quick. I do that just because I know it's going to leave a thin layer of surfactant fluid on the surface of the disc, so that when I apply the enzymatic formula, it spreads evenly and I can let it soak over the entire surface of the disc. So I bring this up just to say I think that surface acting agents are important, although we almost never know exactly what they're using. There are 4 basic categories of surfactants, but there are thousands of different types of surfactants. We tend to see what are called non-ionic surfactants in record cleaning fluids. One such example is turgitol. And if I think earlier I mentioned Turgiclean, it clearly uses turgitol. But there are lots of different kinds. But the ones with no charge, they're very gentle. That's what we tend to see in surfactants used in record clean fluids. You can use negatively charged surfactants. They tend to be stronger. They don't cost as much. We see these in DIY fluids pretty frequently. The other two we never see in record cleaning solutions. There is a subcategory of surfactants known as wetting agents. Very similar in that they allow the water to spread and penetrate just like all surfactants do, but it has no effect on cleaning or emulsification or foaming or anything like that. A lot of DIY guys making their own record cleaning fluids will use wetting agents like PhotoFlow, or this is a made-up word, iPhotol. It's a product from this company. These are wetting agents that are intended to be used with developing film. And they are very effective in acting as a surfactant. I wanted to also mention propylene glycol. That's what another type of wetting agent. That's what Kermis uses in his compound. That's very important. I didn't mention it when I was talking about the Kermis, but I should right now that I think about it. One of the reasons that I sort of praise to the Kermis process, if you're willing to take the time, is his approach is pretty darn unique in that what he's doing with the use of this compound and that particular wetting agent is rendering the static charge. We're going to talk a little bit later about static, but the Kermis process is to render the static charge on the disc of the on the surface of the vinyl opposite to that which is in the tank. And that allows for that deeper cleaning process. That's really his claim to fame. And I don't see anyone, I've never experienced another cleaning system that really utilizes static in that kind of way. But anyway, his wetting agent is propylene glycol. So wanted to mention that. These surfactants whatever percentage, whatever the concentration of surfactant, whatever the type of surfactant, they will stay on the disc, which is why we want to use a pure water rinse after using any enzymatic or record cleaning fluid that has a surfactant in it. We always finish with a pure water rinse. Okay, so let's talk about record cleaning fluids that we have tested. All that you see on the screen have been thoroughly tested in our studio. I like some more than others. AIVS, I do get asked, if you had to go with one brand of record cleaning fluid, what would it be? My answer is AIVS, because they make a wide range of record cleaning fluids. I have every single one of them. I have tried every single one of them, from their sort of lighter cleaning fluids to the more heavy duty stuff, to the enzymatic formulas, to the formulas that have no alcohol at all in them, so good for 78s. And to the one that Jim mentioned, number 15 formula, which is both a record cleaning fluid and an enzymatic solution. Walker Audio Prelude, no longer made. We'll talk a little bit later about their brushes, but a very involved cleaning process. I think they have 6 steps. I don't know if there's still any more available out there, but it's an interesting way of approaching cleaning. I've tried the cleaning. When I say last factory, I'm not talking about the preservative, but actually their record cleaning fluid. Fair bit of alcohol in that, but also inexpensive and reasonably effective. Disc Doctor, we talked about how wonderful their brushes are for a manual cleaning process. The record cleaning fluids that come with the Disc Doctor are particularly effective with those brushes. I do like that record cleaning fluid. L'Art du Sun is well known. It may be, if you could only have one, that would be it. I have had very good experience with MoFi's, Mobile Fidelity's record cleaning fluids. Phoenix is one that I do not like. Right off the bat, I will tell you, I have tried extensively there. It's a mixture, kind of like AIVS number 15. It's record clean fluid and enzymatic formula. It is genetically altered, and I just don't like it. With that said, Phoenix makes a product designed to clean CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, that sort of thing. Comes with a little brush. I think it's fantastic. We did a whole episode just on cleaning your CDs and DVDs and tried several different brands. Phoenix was by far our favorite. So kudos to Phoenix in that, but I don't like their record cleaning fluids. The VPI, tons of alcohol in isopropyl alcohol in that. TTVJ, which is Todd the Vinyl Junkie, kind of akin to Phoenix. It came across to me as a genetically engineered enzymatic mixed in. Just did an okay job. I will say the cleaning fluid that comes with the Spin Clean does a pretty good job. For the budget oriented, if you buy a Spin Clean, I'm like, oh, go with it. It does a good job. Don't like the Studebaker's version of it though. That's really ineffective. Turgiclean, very interesting product. It's concentrated. You only put a little bit in for mix it with pure water. Boy, it's like a paint stripper almost. I love Turgiclean for a pre-clean. Water and alcohol, of course, that's what Kermis recommends. So to sum it all up, these all have their pros and cons. If I had to pick one brand, it would be AIVS. If I had to pick just one model, if you will, one type of record cleaning fluid, I would be torn between L'Art du Sun and AIVS number 15. If you tended to go with newer records, if you're buying new records, go with L'Art du Sun. If you get into some records that have some organic material on them, the AIVS number 15, fantastic, perfect amounts of surfactant. They foams just right. Both of those are great choices. So that's been our experience with the cleaning fluids. So when you use a cleaning fluid, got to use a brush, right? We have tried dozens and dozens of different brushes, and rather than go through all of them, I thought it would just make sense to mention the ones that we like best. We've talked about Disc Doctor for a manual cleaning process. It's just There's something so cool about seeing how much that padded brush just grips that record. You can literally pick it up off the table and it just sticks to the brush. Really interesting. Unfortunately, Walker Audio is no longer available, and they never sold their products where you could just buy the brushes. You had to buy the 6-step record cleaning fluids with it, various different kinds of fluids and enzymatics and water and so forth, which are just okay. But the brushes are exceptionally unique in that they're unidirectional. If you can think about a pad type brush, those little loops, almost akin to the hook and loops of Velcro, the little loops, although a lot softer, of course, but the little loops are generally just, stick straight out, and you can use the brush any way you want. But with the Walkers, they were definitely made to be directing to one side. So that made for a particularly interesting type of brush. And along with the next choice, which was really the Osage, which I consider the best overall bristle type brush for suction type machines. I'd like to use both. So if we're cleaning a record that's particularly dirty, we're going to take a little bit of time on it, and I'm using a suction type machine, I like to apply the liquid with the Walker Audio brush, making sure that the rotation of the record is coming into the direction that the pad is facing. You can actually feel it with your fingers, as that does something that the Osage doesn't, and vice versa. So I wanted to mention Walker. Probably very hard to get these days because they just don't make them anymore. But can't go wrong with Osage. They're well made. They make them for 7-inch records, for 10-inch records. I have multiple. I will use one for water, one for enzymatic, one for a mixture of enzymatic and record cleaning fluid, and another one for record cleaning fluid. I just buy a bunch of them and sort of keep them to their respective fluids. Big thumbs up with Osage. In fact, Osage also is the owner or manufacturer of AIVS. They're both the same company. And then lastly, if you're using a string type machine, those machines rotate the record very, very fast, way more than 33 1/3 RPMs, and much, much faster than your typical suction type machine. I've tried the Osage brushes and all different kind of brushes on a Loracraft, and they just don't work. They just push them out of the way. You need a much stiffer type bristle brush to effectively work on a Loracraft. The Loracraft itself does make a brush that works very good in that regard. VPI's brush is also very similar to the Loracraft. It's stiffer and works very well on those type of machines. So the best brush sort of depends on the process you're using, but these are our winners in our experience. Had to just mention, something about 78s. We did an article on them, episode on them recently, where we used the adapter that is available with the degritter to clean some 78s that we got. And we compared that against cleaning 78s on the VPI Cyclone. The degritter blew it away. Absolutely superior. The only thing you need to keep in mind when cleaning shellac 78s is do not use alcohol. Be 100% sure that there's no alcohol in there. That's not good at all for that type of shellac. AIVS makes an archivist formula designed specifically for 78. It works quite well. The record cleaning fluid that comes with the degritter has no alcohol in it, and it worked pretty well too. In doing this episode about 78s, I wanted to make it clear that if you're a serious 78 guy, there's a lot more to it, right? Not only do you really have to have a dedicated mono deck, which we do have a stereo deck and a mono deck, but you're going to want to have certain shape to the stylus that you're using. You're going to want to, most importantly, have books that will tell you what the EQ curves were of the various companies that were producing records back in those days, and have the ability to change them. The EQ curve. That's that's not commonly available equipment. DeVore Audio, I don't know if any of you know DeVore Fidelity, but John DeVore, is very much into 78s and has a wonderful preamp that costs as much as a house. That is designed to be able to change those EQ curves for the various kinds of companies that were making records back then. I say, though, as long as you can spin them at 78, give them a try. There's just something that kind of hits you right in the heart with that. It's never going to sound hi-fi like we can make today with some gorgeous acoustic sounds reissue or anything like that. But gosh, it just we recently picked up a few 78s to do for this episode, to clean for this episode, and one of them was the ink spots, and just such gorgeous music. It brought a tear to Charlie's eyes. It was really sweet. So I wanted to throw in a moment there in favor of 78s. Okay, let's move on to the stylus and your cantilever, of course. So we also did a recent episode on keeping your stylus styling, and the conclusions that we came to is that the various dry brushes that are out there are just perfect for keeping your stylus clean, and you can use them as frequently as you want. I give it a brush every single record side. The deeper cleaning products, though, I have come to believe through my research that it is something that should be reserved for periodic use. But 10, 20 hours of playing, maybe more, depends on how dirty your records are. You have a couple of choices. Liquid cleaners. I still have some last stylus cleaner from years ago, and it works well. Kermes makes one that I think is particularly interesting. I'm sure it is a if there's any ladies listening, eyelash curlers, like mascara, that's the word I'm looking for. When ladies will put mascara on their eyelashes, that's the kind of brush that is being utilized in some liquid cleaners, Kermes included. And I thought that's a very nice design for cleaning down the cantilever and over the stylus tip. You've got silicone and putty type products. I have the DS Audio ST50, which I think works fairly well. Onzo makes a similar one. But, there's some concern that these might transfer onto the stylus if they're overused. So again, I think they're just best suited for periodic cleaning. And we haven't tried one yet, but I'm very much looking forward to trying an ultrasonic stylus cleaner. I'd probably go for one from Humming Guru, having, I'm so enamored with their products. We got another Humming Guru product we're going to talk about in a second. But the idea of using ultrasonic to clean off the stylus periodically is very interesting to me. So we're going to explore that one. And then I always like to remind folks, never lock down that tone arm when you're clean, with a little loop that comes over top or just locks into its own station there to keep the arm in place. That's a really good way to break your cantilever. If you put too much pressure on it coming from underneath, you want that arm to pick up. So just a helpful hint so we don't have any damage there.
In regards to the ultrasonic cartridge cleaners, are they actually ultrasonic? I mean, with an ultrasonic generator, or are they really just like fast vibration and they're calling it ultrasonic? I'm not really sure that
is a good question. I am not sure either, Jim. I really do not know. I looked into it before this presentation because I had the same question in my mind, and with the time I had to research it, I wasn't able to determine for sure. And I wondered myself, I mean, we're not dunking the cantilever and stylus into cavitating water, are we? Or is it, here's my best guess, and I won't know this until I actually get my hands on one or two and try them. But my best guess is that you're setting the needle, the stylus and the cantilever into let's call it a sponge that is wet, and there's enough moisture in there that when the ultrasonic waves go through that sponge, they're cavitating with the water that's being held in the sponge. That, and by sponge, I mean, let's tiny, tiny little thing there. So, but to be very honest, transparent, I don't really know the answer to your question, but I look forward to trying to figure that out because I'm not sure exactly how they work. Okay, so moving away from records to and styli, I guess it would be, to all the interconnects and lugs and mains cable pins and all the stuff that connect our stereos together. We've done a couple of episodes on this and some testing, and this is the conclusion that we've come to. If you're cleaning an RCA connect or a speaker connector or whatever it is that is metal plated, and that's the important part, plated, then you definitely want to treat it very, very carefully, particularly gold plating. Gold plating can be taken off so easily. So if it's plated, or if you're not sure, assume it's plated, you can clean it with isopropyl alcohol. I like keg deoxit. It's been around forever and works very, very well. You can use just a soft microfiber cloth. I also, if it's a particularly dirty connector, I'll use a toothbrush, a soft nylon toothbrush, to help kind of break up that contamination that is built up on that connector over the years. If you're sure that it's solid, however, so female RCA female connectors or speaker cable lugs, and it's not plated but actual solid metal, I love triple aught or quadruple aught steel wool, the finest steel wool that you can find, and that'll really take the corrosion off very easily. I usually will then follow it up with some alcohol or some deoxit just to get any remaining bits off. And then lastly, there's mains cable plugs or AC plugs. The vast majority of those are solid metal. I suppose they could be plated, but let's assume we're talking about solid metal. Could you use steel wool on those? I think that would help. But I have to say, polishing the pins on your mains cables, let me put it this way. Us audiophiles could argue for eons about what change in any part of the system. Does it actually make a change? Well, every change is a change, so sure, but is it one that you could even hear? Maybe, maybe not. Is it a positive change or a negative change? Sometimes you do something, you change an interconnect or move something around a little bit, and it's a change that you hear, but you can't really tell, is it better or worse? I wouldn't know the difference if I wasn't sort of testing A and B. There's one thing I've been asked many times, what is the one thing you could do that would not only make a difference, but unequivocally improve the sound of any stereo system? And that is to use a metal polish to clean the pins on an AC plug. I will never forget. I'm not the first guy to do this. Lots of fellas have tried it. I'll never forget the first time I did it. And it was on an amplifier, and I took it apart and used a metal cleaning polish to clean those pins, cleaned it up, put it back in, and played it. Charlie, my wife, was in the other room and said, "Oh my gosh." She had no idea I was doing this. And I said, "What's that, honey?" And she said, "It sounds like you took a blanket off the speakers." It is an incredible change. So I just want to, it's rare that I say this is a for sure, no matter what, but that has been my experience. There's lots of metal polish out there. I'm a big fan of Flitz, which is really made for guys in sailboats. There's a lot of beautiful metal parts, chrome and so forth on sailboats, and that's how they market it, but it works extremely well on pins. If you have the type of pin that you can take apart, that makes it easy. You can put it into a vise or a clamp, and you could use a Dremel, a soft Dremel tool, and along with Flitz polish to polish up those pins. If you can't take it apart, you can just use microfiber cloths, and even Q-tips will work. You'll go through about 100 Q-tips before you really polished down the surface of those pins. But big thumbs up for polishing your pins. So let's talk a little bit about static. Is this part of cleaning? I'm going to say yes. We're cleaning up the electrons. Some guys deal with static more than others, right? Depends on where you live. We live in the high desert of northern Nevada. In the wintertime, we get a fair bit of static. Some other areas of the world, not so much. But we did some research on this when we put together our static video, and some things that you can do to help with static. Certainly, grounding your system is important. Do make sure, if you live in a very old house, make sure that the house is grounded. I actually knew a fella, and we were mentioning earlier about the marksmanship sports where guys will reload their own ammunition. I do the same, and sometimes static can mess with that process, and the gunpowder will stick to the metal bits. So it's not uncommon to ground the little manual machine that you're using to make the ammo. And a friend of mine did it. He lived in a very old house, and he put that pin into the ground of the three-prong outlet. And lo and behold, his house was not grounded. And boy, did he find that out the hard way when he grabbed a hold of the handle of that machine. So if your house is new and grounded, you're fine. You can ground your system that way. You can always run a line to a dedicated, have a dedicated ground wire to a cold water pipe or to a copper pipe in the ground. They also make something called ESDs, anti-static mats. You'll see scientists who work with very, very sensitive machines utilize these mats when they're touching the machine. They'll stand on the mats, and they're usually 3 layers, something conductive, something that sort of accelerates that conduction and then takes it to ground. And there's a cord that goes, into the wall outlet where it's hopefully grounded. And that's another possibility. And then there's also various kinds of turntable mats that have anti-static characteristics: cork, leather, carbon fiber, felt is said to. And there's even one guy out there selling deer hide mats. I've never tried those, but he claims it to be anti-static. I think, however, we would all agree that whatever level of static you have out there, the most common way to deal with it is just to render it neutral. So we all know of the zero stat. This is the newer blue version. It has a little connector there on the end that's it's got a little light in it that helps you understand how slowly you're supposed to pull that quote unquote trigger back and then let it out. You do have to pull it slowly, let it out slowly. The red ones that were around since the 70s work just as well. We tried both. And I will say, I think the zero stat is a reasonably cost-effective solution, and it works. However, I discovered something recently that I'm really excited to share with you guys, and that is the Humming Guru Orbit. It's a little bit more money, but it's not ridiculous. And what we did was, you know how, Jim, you were saying, or I apologize if it wasn't Jim, someone said, wouldn't it be cool to have, to put records or to put dirt on records in equal amounts? Well, we kind of tried that same approach with dealing with static. So we got ourselves a 25-cent, bin record, and spent an entire Saturday applying static to that record with a wool cap, and then measuring the before and after with a static meter. And we kept records. So we would apply the static and say, okay, it's at this amount. Then we would do the zero stat, and then test it again, and it got down to this amount. And we did this 100 times, 50 times for zero stat, 50 times for the Humming Guru Orbit. And what we found is that the zero stat works, no doubt, but the Orbit works better. It consistently had a greater decrease in the static readings, and the times we were able to get it down to 0.00 was only with the Orbit. And then I will say this: so if you're willing to spend a little bit more money and are trying to deal with static, I highly recommend the Humming Guru Orbit. The other thing is, it's just so cool. It's so fun. You basically set it on your spindle. It comes with some spacers if you have a higher than normal spindle. And you turn it on and you press that little button on the top, and it spins around 10 times on its own and stops. And when you're ready, pick it up and play your record. It's got a built-in battery so it can be recharged. And it also, because there's a suction system in there to bring in air and a filter. It will get dirty over time, but it's easy to take that out. It comes with a little brush to clean it. Just a really interesting little machine, and so it's such a joy to use. Whereas with the zero stat, there's different approaches to how you get the best use out of it. We could talk about those. I think the four times pulling it and releasing it approach once in each third of the record, and then a fourth time over the middle has seemed to work best for us. But I much prefer the Orbit. It's so much easier to use and a joy to use, and it does work better. Whether you could tell the difference between the two, that's debatable, but definitely a superior product in our experience.
Couple questions on that, Kurt. One,
Sure.
what is the relative cost currently of a zero stat versus the Orbit? At least
Yes. I don't have that at the top of mind. I want to say the Orbit's maybe 250. There's I don't want to stop sharing right now, or I'd give it a quick look up. I want to say $250. And what's the zero stat? Maybe 125, something like that. Is it double the price?
And could you speak a little bit, in your opinion, on, because I tried to do some research on this and I got generally one answer, but I got some off answers. So if you have a record and you're doing vinyl playback and it's particularly, you have a high static, or there we go, they just put that at 250 for the Orbit, and you have a lot of static going on. One person tried to convince me it would actually affect the sound of the playback. Most of the people I talked to said you will get some pops and ticks from the static, but that is all you will get.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
can you speak to, in your opinion and your knowledge, if what does it even matter when, in terms of vinyl playback, if other than some pops and ticks, if that is true, what would be the downside of having static on a record, and why should we be concerned about it?
I have never experienced a sonic degradation from static. It's just an annoyance factor. I would be in the latter camp. It's pops and ticks.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I that's an interesting one. That's new for me. I've
Well, as
never
I said,
believed.
majority of people said it was pops and ticks, but it might have been a couple places I read online. Someone was alluding to the fact that they thought it affected the sound, but people will allude to all kinds of things online. So
This is true, Jim. This is true. Boy, maybe an extreme amount of static could so mess with the needle being drugged through the groove that it could miss information. It could pass over information because there's static pops exploding it away from the walls of the groove. I suppose it's theoretically possible, but boy, I would think that would have to be a heck of a lot of static. Okay, so let's talk about sleeves. I'm specifically focusing on inner sleeves, but the same advice I would suggest applies to those of you who might choose to use outer sleeves. Some guys will do that, right? Every single record they have will have the original outer sleeve, put into an aftermarket sleeve with a record behind it. I've often wondered if it was worth doing that. I don't personally, but it's basically the material that we're going to talk about here. Obviously, when it comes to new sleeves, we want to keep them clean, scuff free. We've all seen old records that are scuffed to heck, and as neutral on the static front as possible. So I will say plain paper is to be avoided at all costs. I never put a quality record into plain paper. Of course, though, if you're dealing with an old record and you've got the original paper inner, do keep it, right? If you have an original UK mono pressing of Sgt. Pepper's, it's going to come with that blue wavy inner versus the red one that was on the stereo. For heaven's sake, don't throw that away. But I would not put the record in it. And I would also avoid PVC. There is polyvinyl chloride, very cheap, plasticky kind of inners that can off-gas and damage the vinyl over time. They can stick to it. They're just to be avoided at all costs in my research. I think it's okay to use, perhaps for maybe not your most valuable recordings, a low density polyethylene. Generally, it's paper on the outside with a plastic lining on both sides of the inside of that paper. There's nothing wrong with that. It is going to keep it clean. It's going to likely keep it scuff free, but it doesn't have anti-static qualities to it. So it won't do any damage, but there are, I think, better choices in high density polyethylene. A very stable, inert product, extremely smooth, and does have anti-static properties to it. Generally, they add that to the HDPE between 3 and 5%. Hopefully, they don't add too much. The ones that I'm going to recommend in our experience don't have too much, though I bet all of you have seen an inner sleeve that has too much anti-static additive. And what happens is you kind of get that white powdery release over time. If you've ever seen that, that's probably a polyethylene that has a lot of anti-static additive. We don't want to go too far with that. As far as rice paper is concerned, I have seen over the years just rice paper inners. Don't like them. Is it better than plain paper? Probably, but I don't want the records next to any paper. But I think it's fantastic, the high-end inner sleeves, when they have a layer of rice paper sandwiched in between high-density polyethylene. It helps sort of keep it stiff. It's a really nice touch in that regard, but it's actually not touching anything. So this is our take on inner sleeves, and the ones that we have come to really like. Probably not a big surprise. The MoFis, I think, are fantastic quality, as are the ones from Acoustic Sound. That's Chad Kassem's product there. I think it's called Quality Recordings. These are Kermes's. I think they're the best of all that I've tried. Doesn't mean that they're a little on the large size, so it might not slide easily into your original outer jacket, but they are extremely high quality. And then there's another one I want to mention. Sorry for the kind of fuzzy picture, but that's the best one I could find. These are likely a low density polyethylene, so they're a little thinner. And what makes them unique is that they're rounded on the bottom. These are referred to as Japanese inner sleeves, only because they're made in Japan. What I like about these is if you're going to keep your original inner, the original paper inner, and you want to be able to put the record into a proper new clean sleeve, but then put that into the original inner, these make a very good choice for that. They're so thin, and that rounded bottom means that you can slide them into the paper, the original paper inner, without damaging that inner. So I always keep a nice supply of those on hand for when I'm sort of keeping everything together. But if I'm going to replace the inner, I tend to like one of these three. I'm sure there are other good ones out there. We haven't tried them all. Lots of sources out there. Sleeve City, I've done business with, other suppliers of this stuff. But these are the ones we think are the best that we've come across thus far. Okay, we're getting near the end here. Just two more topics. Hey, we got to keep our system clean. The system itself, the surface of the equipment. I've heard so many horror stories over the years of a maid or a loved one or a child or something that goes to dust daddy's system and ends up ripping off the cantilever right from the tone arm, right from the cartridge. So oh gosh, don't let that happen. Gives me shudder to think about that sort of thing. And do be careful when dusting the system. Be careful when you get around the cartridge, just for your own state of mind. But we actually did a little video on dusting the system, tried some different kind of cloths, and what we found we liked best were these thick, very soft microfiber cloths that have no edge on them. They typically are blue in color, and you get them from auto parts stores. And they do a great job of grabbing up the dust and not leaving streaks of it on the surface of your gear. I like the brand is called Swiffer. Sort of a little plastic handled guy. They make big ones, small ones. They make a little fella, just a handheld one that's really great for getting underneath your gear. So that's a good to have. And then a more traditional microfiber duster. They tend to be conical in shape. I mean, they're $6 from a hardware store. This is not expensive, but they're great for sort of inserting in between gear or in between the gear and the stanchions of your shelf and things of that nature, or above it in between the bottom of the shelf that's above the gear. Just a great way to pull out the dust there. And then lastly, a little trick that we found works well is to go on, I don't know, Amazon or something like that and get cheap white gloves. I think the package we bought had 50 pairs of gloves in there. And once I get done getting the majority of the dust off, I put on those white gloves and touch the tubes and run my fingers over the knobs and buttons and so forth, and that does a great job of really cleaning everything, getting it nice and spiffy looking. So that's how we deal with dusting. And then lastly, look at that record, right? Because we're dedicated to cleaning and restoring records, we've had some experience with flattening records. Couple of things to keep in mind. It is important that you clean the record before you undertake any flattening process. 70s vinyl, not all 70s vinyl, but for those of us who were around during the oil crisis, that made its way into the vinyl somehow, some way. I don't know. I can't speak to exactly how the formulas changed, and of course they can be different in every record pressing plant. But some of that mid 70s era vinyl is next to impossible to flatten. We actually found one record that I said, this has got to be the toughest record to flatten. It was a reissue of like a mid to late 70s reissue of Kiss. Anybody remember Kiss? Their album Dressed to Kill. And it was terribly warped. And we said, can we flatten this? It took us weeks, but we finally did. We finally did flatten it, but I can't tell you how many processes we had to go through to finally get it flat. Whereas if you get a brand new vinyl, it can be a little bit warped. And you know what? Generally, one process will get it perfectly flat if you're dealing with quality new vinyl or quality old vinyl from the 60s and so forth. It's not that hard to flatten. It's just that stuff from the 70s that can be a pain in the butt. As far as the products that are concerned, we own the vinyl flat with the groovy pouch, as they call it. That's nothing more than a tiny little electric blanket that helps heat things up. And it's a process wherein if you do it right, you go slowly into it. Maybe you just start with a half an hour and then let it cool, and then go 45 minutes and let it cool, and then an hour, and you just keep checking it until the record is flat. There's a new system out there called the Pi system that looks really interesting. I've written them a note and asked if they would be interested in having us review it, because it just really looks cool. Kind of similar to the vinyl flat, but I think they've made some what will appear to be improvements as to how it functions. Some of the other ones out there are more expensive, the Orb, the Furatech. I do have experience with the Furatech. It was at a retail store. Some of you may remember Brian over at the Analog Room. Brian has passed away now, but he was a great guy. He let me borrow his Furatech there for a while, and I flattened some records with it. Very, very nice process. It almost looks like a big old waffle iron, and you just kind of clamp it down, and it does a good job. These others that I mentioned, I have not tried, but there are options out there for you. And then, of course, there's the DIY method that some guys have tried, where they take glass plates, put some weight on top of it, put it in the sun, maybe put it into an oven. I'm hesitant to do that. I think the oven, even at its lowest settings, may be a little too hot. And if you overdo it, you're going to ruin the record. So I've not tried the glass plate method, but there's plenty of videos and testimony out there that that's a possibility. But I will give a thumbs up for the vinyl flat. It's inexpensive and absolutely works. So we have saved some records from the bin with that approach. So, guys, that's it. That's our overview of what we've been doing for the past year plus now in cleaning records and keeping our stereos clean.
Excellent. That was a great, very encompassing talk, Kurt. Yeah, if you unshare, and then I'm going to let people, if they have some questions,
Sure.
either
How do I
raise your hand.
unshare? Oh, stop sharing. There we go.
There you
There
go.
we go.
Right. If you would like to ask Kurt a question, I would recommend either, I'm going to go to the chat here, see if we have some questions. Let's see. Agree. Fantastic talk. I agree. Oh, $90 for Zerostat, or about $100.
Oh, okay.
And this person said the orbit was 300 to 315, but another person said 250. So,
Oh, you know what? Charlie just came by. Thank you, Charlie. She said the retail is $299, but it's often on sale for $250.
okay, very good. Fair enough.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a couple questions, but I'm going to let other people ask first. Bernie, do you have a question?
Well, Kurt, I just had a quick one. You seem to be fairly likable of the last product. What do you think of their the last preservative?
I got in one of the most knockdown, drag out arguments. I mean, not really, with Charles Kermis over that. Because
Well, he called it love.
Yeah, he is not a fan of that. And in fact, one of the episodes we did was, can last preservative be removed? And we, looked at it as close as we can with the instruments that we have, gave it a listen with our ears, and then we put it through the full restoration process. And I'm not sure if we actually removed it. It's down there at a atomic level. But to answer your question directly, we did do extensive listening tests with the preservative. The record cleaning fluid is fine. It's inexpensive. A little too much alcohol, I think, but it's effective. But the preservative, hard to say. I mean, you have to rely on last and the decades of experience and the very high-end gear that they have or equipment that they have to go down to a micron level to say, this is actually sticking and having an effect. All I can point to is two things. I applied last preservative in the late 70s and early 80s, and it's really remarkable what good shape those records are still in. Still have them. So I think that says something. And then secondly, we did, as I mentioned, actual listening tests before and after, because if it's preserving the record, that's great. And especially for those who will have our records when we're long gone, whoever they may be. There's something nice about that. But let's say I didn't give a crap about that. Does it sound worse? And I found, and Charlie would agree with me, we not only did we not think it sounds worse, we thought it sounded a little bit better. And boy, did that tick off Charles, because he was sure it's a degradation in sound. But that's not been our experience. Do I put last preservative on every record we clean? I don't, but I do on our most treasured recordings, especially those that we think people are going to be playing this in 150 years' time.
Well, in comments, I have one gentleman say, I've had success at dewarping a record by putting it in its sleeve on a flat surface with a stack of large books and just letting it sit for a week or so.
You're right.
Heat necessary.
That's right. Yeah, eventually pressure and time will flatten that record. You're right. The products will, using the right amount of heat and more extreme pressure than you can get with books or bricks or whatever you lay on it, we'll do it a bit faster. But yeah, you can do it the slow way.
Jan, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. I listened to Charles Kermis, a very long presentation where he argued with Michael Fremer, as I recall.
Yes.
And anyway, I was hoping you could give me a little more information about what you think about the kermes. You just said that it takes a long time, it's a little frustrating, blah, blah, blah. But if you like the way it cleans, in fact, you compared it to the degritter as one of the best of all. Can you speak a little bit more about the kermes?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm glad you brought up Michael Fremer. If you allow me, I'm going to drop a name. I am not buddies with Michael Fremer, but when I mentioned I was an expat in the UK and I was writing articles on shows for Positive Feedback and Listener and others, I got to correspond with Michael, and I bought him, I don't know, a dozen or more UK pressings. That he gave me his list. This is what, and I would go to record shows every weekend in London and try to find good stuff. And I would find what he was looking for and send it to him, and he would send me a check. So that's my little how I got to know
He's a
Michael.
good guy when it comes to that.
He is, absolutely. He's a fine gentleman. To your question, what I like about the kermes is it's an extremely gentle process. Which I suppose is good and bad. The bad part is you got to do it multiple times. If I had a record I perceived the level of dirt to be such that it just needed a single ultrasonic cleaning and it would be ready to go, I would never break out the kermes. That's something for the KL Audio or a degritter or something along those lines. But if you have a really treasured record and you're willing to spend a half hour, 40 minutes cleaning one record by generally it depends on if it's an old record or a new record as to how many minutes and so on and so forth. But the basic idea is give it a surface clean with just water and a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. It's like 40 milliliters to 1.75 gallons. That's about the ratio, so it's not very high. And it does help to act as a surfactant. And if there's any mold, it'll help to kill it. So that's a good thing. But you start with the surface clean. And then there's no drying mechanism in the kermes. The idea is you take it out after one clean. It comes with a little Lazy Susan with a spindle hole, and you can put the record on there. And then there is not a badger hair brush like we gentlemen use when they shave, but goat hair. It's a goat hair brush, and you spray this compound onto the record, which is 99% distilled water, but has that wetting agent in it, and then basically mix it around, just move it around the record. And the idea is you're not cleaning. This goat hair brush couldn't possibly clean anything. But what it does is render the static charge on the surface on both sides of the record opposite to that which is in the tank. So as those cavitation bubbles are happening, they're naturally brought together. Opposites attract, right? Just like a battery or anything in our universe. It brings those cavitation bubbles deeper into the groove. And however, we're dealing with 35 hertz, three transducers coming up from the bottom. So you got to do it several times. There's also an agent, some sort of colorization agent in that compound that helps you visually realize, am I getting this record clean? Because what will happen is after the second, third, maybe fourth, heck, maybe fifth time that you put it through this 5-minute cycle, that color agent begins to go away. And you have to watch very carefully at how the water is beating up. If you've got lots and lots and lots of beads of water on there, you need to keep going. What will happen is over time that after doing it multiple times, the colorization agent is very, very faint, and the way the water beads lets you know this is now clean. But there's no drying, there's no dryer that comes with it. But however, because the isopropyl alcohol is in the mix, by the time you get this record clean, you don't need a drying agent. You can just take a microfiber cloth. He calls it his bunny cloth. It's just a microfiber cloth with little bunnies on it. I have no idea why he picked that as his logo, but you just kind of wipe it off and damp off any of the remaining droplets of water. and it will air dry. You give it a few minutes and it will finish itself air drying. And if you're willing to go through that process, and the final process, interestingly, is a carbon fiber brush that Kermes makes. On one side, it's just a carbon fiber brush, exactly like the Audio Quest or millions of carbon fiber brushes that are out there. But on the other side is an extremely fine padded brush. I mean, as fine as I've ever seen. And that he calls it a polish. That polishing process will absolutely remove any remaining material, and you can see it with your bare eyes. It does polish the record. I was a little skeptical when I first heard about that. In fact, when I first talked to Kermes, I was introduced to him through Ollie at Watersound, the fellow who previously distributed Lorecraft. I said, I think I'm going to use your system and then take it out and put it on my string cleaning machine and suck the water off that way. And of course, he freaked out. And we talked through it. But I agree with them ultimately that it is a fantastic process by virtue of the static charge, getting those opposite, and then finishing it off with that polishing process. The way we tested this is certainly with some dirty records, some old dirty records from the 60s and so forth, and it did a fantastic job. But it was really with the new records. So take I don't know, what's something that Chad has put out recently, the Steely Dan albums, Asia and so forth, Gaucho, they're just really fantastic sounding records. I think there's been a few that weren't off pressings that might have been a problem, but generally speaking, phenomenal sounding stuff. You'd think that's as good as it gets. You don't need to clean it anymore. But you know what? If you're willing to, let's say you're a giant Steely Dan fan and Asia's your favorite record, take the 45 minutes and put it through the full restoration process. And what we hear, it's not like there were clicks and pops and dirt before. It came out of a great record pressing plant. It's a fantastic quality sound. But once it goes through that process, you kind of have a sense that the noise floor has been lowered. It's a little bit louder. Is it 6 dB louder? No. What do humans hear? A 3 dB increase is instantly recognizable to most people. This feels like a 2 to 3 dB increase. It's just a little bit louder, and it has that silky black background that we audiophiles love. I couldn't possibly do it with every record I cleaned. I'd go crazy. We'd do nothing but cleaning records. But for your most treasured stuff, I think the process is worth it.
All right. I got a question in the comments, and then Brian has his hand raised. But first, this question, for those records we get at yard sales,
Yeah.
do you think it's enough to put through the spin clean and then ultrasonic, or is it vacuum vinyl cleaner really needed to get those clean?
I say generally speaking, no. If you've got a spin clean and you're going to pre-clean something in a spin clean, whatever record clean fluid you choose, I think that's, and then into an ultrasonic, I think that's a fantastic regimen for cleaning. The only downside, the only area where it really is advantageous to having the suction type machine is if you're dealing with a lot of organic material and you want to give it an enzymatic soak. Can you mix up a batch of enzymatic formula and put it in a spin clean? I suppose you could. But generally, enzymatic formulas are just meant to sit on the top of the record and soak for 5 or so minutes. So the record's in the wrong orientation in a spin clean for that. So I would say vast majority of the time, a spin clean followed by an ultrasonic is a fantastic process, unless you're dealing with a ton of organic material. Then you want to have that soak. I suppose you could do that. Now that I think about it, you could do that without a suction type machine, right? You could just set it onto a table with a microfiber cloth, spread around the enzymatic formula, let it soak, and then just wipe it off. Then maybe get it into your spin clean for a pre-clean, and then onto an ultrasonic. I use multiple type machines depending on what I'm facing.
Very good. Brian, you have your hands up if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, it's Brian here in Oakland. I got a couple of things. I got the Kermis machine. I got the VPI Cyclone.
Nice.
Started out with a Okinoki.
Uh-huh.
VPI was claiming, yeah, it's the only one that goes in reverse. But sorry to say, the Okinoki does too. Fremer doesn't like the ones where you flip the record over and it covers the entire side that you just cleaned. Project makes one with like a little puck.
Yes.
So the surface isn't sitting on the entire mat. I don't know if it does for stability when you're trying to rub a brush across it. But anyway, ultrasonic machines I've noticed heat the water up pretty quick.
Yeah.
Doesn't take long. And
You're right.
some of my, I wouldn't say any of my records are pretty precious. You know, I'm into this for listening to music, and that Kermis thing, man, it's some work.
Yeah, sure is.
And I think it gets hot too fast. So the other thing was, I'm not sure about that eyeliner brush that he has on that record cleaning, on that stylus
Oh,
cleaning.
the stylus? Yeah, you think that might not be the right choice?
I have never tried it, and I'm a little hesitant to drag that across my moving coil stylus. So I don't know if anybody knows how to work it. I give it a try, but it looks a little rough to me.
Well, it really. I thought the same thing when I first saw the mascara like brush, and but when I actually felt it, I put rubber gloves on. It was quite soft. It felt like, okay, this is a soft version of what a lady might use to put on mascara.
Oh,
So
okay.
that quelled my concern. But to your first point, you're absolutely right. If you're using any type of machine that has a flat, horizontal surface, and you're putting a dirty record on it, cleaning it, and then flipping it, well, you're putting your clean record right back onto the dirty part.
Right.
So there's, at a minimum, I keep a Giotto blaster next to the record cleaning machine and blow off any debris that might be on the cork surface or whatever it is before I flip it over. Another option is to have a rubberized mat that you can put on there, and then when you go to flip it over, set that one aside and put a new clean one on. So there's two ways to deal with that. When it comes to overheating, be it a Kermis machine or any kind of ultrasonic machine, you're right, they can overheat over time. There's two ways to deal with that. One is to go through the degassing process. Not every ultrasonic has a degassing function. I think it's important. I give kudos to Kermis for incorporating that into his product. It does make a difference. So if the water begins to heat up, first thing you can do is degas it, and maybe take the lid off and degas it, and that will cool it down a little bit. If it's still too warm, change the water. That's what you got to do. One of the
That's a lot of water.
You're going to go through a ton of water. If you just used Kermis, tons and tons of distilled water.
Yeah, there was another thing. I was on the VPI forum, and I've been doing this thing for a couple of years. They had a whole thing about cleaning solutions and the DIY type ultrasonics. And I don't know. One of those guys was like, yeah, our secret formula is a little non-perfumed clear dish soap, a little bit of alcohol, and deionized water, and that's our our solution. Oh, and some photo flow. Yeah, just mix up a couple of quarts of that, and you'll be set.
Well, I've never tried them, and I got to tell you, we do have, we keep a like a 3-ring binder, and some random evening, we'll be having dinner with Charlie, and I'll go, what if we did an episode about it? She'll grab the binder, and we'll write it down as a possible. One of those future possibilities is to explore the idea of DIY liquids, but I have to admit, I've never done it thus far.
Yeah, whole ultrasonic thing was, and I have no way of measuring it, but it was the frequency versus does it mess with the high frequencies of the record. And I thought I could hear it on the DIY because I did the DIY ultrasonic cleaner thing. Got the record stack. I think that's what the one I got.
Yep, familiar.
And yeah, the Kermis doesn't sound like it messes with the high frequencies, but man, it's a process. But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you,
Well,
Brian.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's my experience as well.
Larry, you have your hand up. You're the next. If you would unmute yourself and.
Thanks. Just have a couple, a question and then a couple comments. Have you showed a picture on the suction type machines of the clear audio double matrix?
Yes.
Have you tried that?
Yes, I did get an opportunity to try.
The new ones have it's suction and they have ultrasonic, both in the machine. Did you?
No, you've stumped me on that one. That I have
They
not.
added that, I don't know, a few years ago. The ultrasonic. The only thing is they're expensive. I mean, they're as much as the KL audios. They're now $6,000.
Yep.
It's twice, and double matrix is, I think, the same price.
Well, I will then change what I said before. I tried the double matrix years ago.
Oh,
it had no ultrasonic function to
no,
it.
that's been
It was cool though. Looked great and cleaned both sides at the same time.
Yeah,
it was kind of interesting.
No, that one they've added that.
I'll have to research that. Thank you, Larry.
Check that out.
I will.
Also about so on the degridders.
Yeah.
That I grabbed, I know. They have a degassing function.
They do.
Yes.
But
Yes,
they also have they have a sensor that keeps track of the heat
Yes,
in
it
the
does.
water, and it shuts down.
Yep.
It doesn't shut down. It laces the thing and cools the water down, so you don't have to worry about the kermes.
Chris, you're up next.
Hey, thanks. First, I wanted to thank you for your videos and education.
Thank you.
It helped. I've had a 3-year project of washing my whole collection, and I'm doing it the cheap way. So I've got an antique nitty gritty at the end of 2 spin cleans. I switched from PhotoFlow to Turgitol at your recommendation, and it does work better.
Got it.
But here's the 10-cent question.
Okay.
I got my records clean. The new stuff, analog productions, for example, I've had people come in and go, is that really the record? Okay. There's no click, there's no pop, there's no noise. It's great.
Nothing.
The old stuff, a click here and there, it's fine. How long is that going to hold up? Do I need to re-clean often? Once I've really invested in a record, can I leave it alone for a good while?
Yeah, I do occasionally re-clean records. I mean, I bet we all have more records than we quote unquote need, and some that may go a decade or 2 before you listen to them, if ever. I'll bet there's a few records that I've picked up from garage shows over the year I have yet to listen to. But some of those that go into more normal, more frequent rotation, I will re-clean them. Will I go through a complete, kermes process? No. But I do find this is where something like the KL Audio is awesome, because hey, I cleaned this at one point, but it needs a quick touch up and just drop it in and boom, it's done. It's ultra convenient and that's nice to have. But that said, if you're not going to, once you've properly cleaned a record and you're sensing that it could be cleaned again, you're hearing some pops and ticks, sometimes the Giotto Blaster will take care of that. Or a brush, a carbon fiber brush.
So that brings up the other compliment. I've had a Giotto blaster for my camera gear since forever.
Oh, okay.
I haul it out to the record cleaning kit whenever I go clean.
Nice.
Amazing.
I know.
Big help. The other one was moving the zero stat out there. So kudos on both of those. The last question. And I'm not sure whether it was your video or somebody else is using a barbecue piezoelectric fire starter in lieu of the zero stat.
It wasn't me.
They're about 6 to 8 inches long, and they throw an arc between a couple of points.
Oh,
and they're waving that.
I must look into this.
Yeah, I wanted you to take a look at it.
It's a barbecue starter?
Yeah, it's a barbecue
Igniter.
Igniter.
Barbecue
It basically
igniter.
throws a piezo arc about a 1/4 inch wide, and the guy is holding it over his record down close, as if it was like a zero stat.
Oh, that's so cool.
And he says it works, and it cost him $12.50 or something.
Oh, wow.
So, the internet is full of
my
nonsense.
orbit that spins around on its own.
Yeah.
But this I got to look into.
Yeah. So if that works, I'd love to hear about it on your channel.
That's a new one.
I do have to ask the last question, which is the Humming Guru you reviewed, the higher end one.
I haven't yet done that.
You haven't done that one yet?
No, we have not. We're hoping to. Yeah.
Several. But even for the lower price, what I need to know is whether it's appreciably better than a spin clean wash, pure water rinse, a vacuum, dry new sleeves.
I think that is the key question, because if we compare the $400 or $500 Humming Guru to a $6,000 KL audio, you're like, all right, what's the point there? But that's the proper comparison. I agree 100%. It's pretty much the same kind of money. So which is the superior approach, or which works well in tandem with one or the other?
$100 for the spin cleans on sale.
Yeah. $50, $60
$100 for the nitty gritty.
Yep.
And some time to clean it up.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have wide bladder, so you don't have the problem of wet versus on side one, side two.
You're right.
So I'm 200 in. Throwing 500 more would get me in trouble. 800 is edgy. $4,000 is out of control. So
okay, thank you.
Anything you can do.
I would throw in there and say, a lot of this also depends on your system, and are you spinning a nice turntable with a $200 cartridge and a nice decent quality system, or are you or do you have a $10,000, $20,000 table with a $15,000 cartridge on it that you want to eke every bit of music and life out of that cartridge before you send it in for a rebuild? If you have a multi-$100,000 system with a $40,000-$50,000 analog front end, I'd say you go for the max. But
wow.
But
it's also a number of records. How many records?
That too.
Yeah. And time,
it could. Did you guys hear? I use for the stereo deck, we have a loaded LP12, ubiquitous, and a Koetsu cartridge. They're back in business, I heard. Yes. They've gone out of business and now they're back. This is cool because my Koetsu is nearing its end of life. So I'm wondering if maybe a replacement is in order at some point.
Well, I'm going to throw out one more question since I'm the moderator, and I'm going to take advantage of that. And then I think we're going to probably try to finish up because we're at 2 hours, a little bit over. Okay. But I've noticed on some records, older records, that have definitely have some mold or organic material on them. And you can see little cloudy, white, splotchy things on the vinyl. And even after an enzymatic treatment, multiple cleans on a VPI or VPI and then ultrasound, they sound pretty good and they certainly look a lot cleaner, but those little cloudy splotches, they don't budge. They do not go away. And I suspect it's just damage to the vinyl, and no amount of cleaning, unless you throw, quadruple odd, fiber on it or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
you're not gonna. It's just
Sandblaster. Yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
It's not gonna go away.
It's not going to go away. In fact, interestingly, our most viewed video, which I think is up now to 55,000 views, something like that, was on two records that we just could not clean. And we speculated, is it microfracturing like Last Factory says is possible? Is it just a poor quality pressings? We're still not 100% sure what it was, but we just put it through a ridiculous amount of cleaning to see if we could clean this up to get rid of this annoying background noise. And ultimately we were unsuccessful. And I think that's an example, although this was sonic, what we were hearing, there are some visual things you can see on vinyl that I have never been able to get off.
Yeah,
And that's one of them.
I bought some new old stock records, or records that were produced in the 70s, 80s that were never opened, and you take them out, never been played, and they have little wavy marks on the inner, from the plastic. That does not go away.
My guess is, I'm just speculating that was part of the manufacturing, a poor manufacturing process, and you're never going to get rid of that.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Fantastic evening. Thank you, Kurt.
Oh, I enjoyed it so much. Thank you so much for inviting me.
All right,
last awesome.
Kind of question. Otherwise, I think some of us, including myself, want to go eat dinner. No, sorry, Bernie, you already asked a question. No, I'm joking. Go ahead.
No,
I just have a quickie. Sure. Would it be possible for us to be able to contact you maybe once in a while?
100% yes.
How do we contact you?
I would let me just throw this out right now. I have a Gmail email account.
Okay.
Morgan, Morgan, my surname, .Kurt, which is KURT, @gmail.com. Morgan.Kurt@gmail.com. Anybody sends me something, I would absolutely love to correspond. And then I would ask Jim, is it okay if I send a PDF of our presentation to you and you can distribute that, and I'll put my contact information in there?
Absolutely. We will do that, and we can add that. This will go on to our website. We'll do a very short write-up, and then I'll have the video, and then we can, if you want to do the slide deck, we can throw that on there, and then we'll have your contact information, how to find your YouTube pages and all that stuff. So
sure. Cool.
Excellent.
You'll tickle Charlie Pink if you become a subscriber.
Well, at this point, I'm going to stop recording.